also into India.
I think every Indian's first car is almost inevitably some sort of a Maruti.
Absolutely. I think at least from my generation onwards, my dad, I think first car was a Fiat, but my generation onwards, the first car has been a Maruti.
Let's talk about the leader in the Indian automobile segment, particularly for passenger vehicles, Maruti Suzuki. I think it's one of your favorite stocks of all time.
Absolutely. And I've been tracking this company right from IPO days. And I would say that Maruti Suzuki is India's shining example of foreign direct investment working for the country as well as the investor. And when Sanjay Gandhi gave the opportunity to Suzuki Motors to partner his fledgling company Maruti, I think Suzuki Motors took it with both hands, and full credit to them for pouring their soul into the company and bringing the best state-of-art products. Usually what happens is that if when a foreign company comes to India, they put their second-hand, the not-so-great products, but Suzuki Motors went ahead and developed products specifically for the Indian market, and it has paid very rich dividends for them. And Suzuki was the number 4 player in Japan. And when they came to India, the Indian subsidiary now is the largest in the Suzuki Motors ecosystem and has created fantastic value for Suzuki Motors shareholders, for Maruti shareholders like us, for the country at large, and for the entire auto ecosystem, because they brought a lot of auto ancillaries also into India.
I think every Indian's first car is almost inevitably some sort of a Maruti.
Absolutely. I think at least from my generation onwards, my dad, I think first car was a Fiat, but my generation onwards, the first car has been a Maruti. And everybody has fond memories of the Maruti 800 and the other various models. And now I think the company's really got products across all segments, and all those products are market leaders within those segments. And they are continuously bringing new technology, new design, new products, new variants into the country. And that's really driving growth for Maruti Suzuki.
Yeah, I think one number that I saw is that only 3% of all Indian consumers actually own a passenger vehicle. And given that Maruti is the entry-level passenger vehicle for most Indians, is it fair to expect that their sales will continue to grow at the rate at which it's been growing, as you can see, as more and more Indians, hit the income threshold and are able to afford passenger vehicles?
Yes, I think so. And with all near 50% or thereabout market share right now, I think it gets at 42% or so, keeps going up by 3-4 percentage points. Obviously, I think as the industry grows, it is going to be the market leader which will, first of all, drive the growth, as well as capture a larger pie of the rising sales or the incremental sales which take place over there. And Maruti has lagged in a couple of segments, like SUVs, was driven by Mahindra and Mahindra and some of the new generation auto companies which came to India. But it has quickly learned from its mistakes, and it has launched appropriate products then which have become extremely popular and market leader, like the Grand Vitara is there, or some of the other SUVs. They become market leaders because although they were late, but the product is of such a nature that has been really appreciated by the consumer. So it's been a shining example of how auto company has created wealth. And not only that, I think there are certain nuances of Maruti which people do not know. One is the fact that it follows a very asset-light business model.
I think they have no debt on their books as well.
Of course, it goes without saying. But 2 or 3 interesting aspects about them is that Suzuki Motors then, once the capacity utilization was reaching peak level for Maruti, then Suzuki Motors came into India and set up a new plant in Gujarat. And that Gujarat plant has got an exclusive sales arrangement with Maruti only. So Maruti was saved the capital cost of setting up a new plant, and it's a very transparent pricing agreement between Suzuki Motors and Maruti Suzuki about how they will produce, and the Maruti Suzuki will sell those new models. And that's a new state-of-art plant, generated a lot of employment within Gujarat as well, and created more than adequate capacity for Maruti to grow. That's nuance number 1. The second thing, what very few people know, is that Maruti has used its cash flow to buy huge parcels of land around major cities, around major consuming centers. And they are providing this land to their dealers on a kind of agreement or a rental basis, so that those dealers can set up large workshops, they can set up large showrooms over there for pushing sales. And really, when you ask a Maruti consumer, one of the biggest advantages of Maruti is its network, availability of spare parts, availability of service centers, and availability of dealers who they can walk into and try out their products.
Yeah.
So the strategy has been phenomenal, and hats off to Maruti that from last 40 years they have maintained a near 50% market share. It was much higher, still at 50% despite 20 plus auto companies in India to have maintained such a huge market share.
Yeah. I guess two points, I guess, just to note from what you said. The first is that in spite of the fact that Maruti hasn't seemingly made any significant EV investments, this partnership with Suzuki and by extension with Toyota, it would seemingly insulate them from the technological disruption caused by EVs. Because if they're able to purchase cars at transparent transfer prices from their parent entity, even if it's for gasoline cars, presumably that arrangement would carry over to EVs or hydrogen cars or whatever it might be. Is that a fair expectation, or is the lack of investment in EVs a risk for them?
You answer one question for me, Varun. Who is leading the EV revolution in the world? Is Japan really a key player as far as EV is concerned?
I don't think so.
Exactly. Then how is Toyota and Suzuki going to be a key player when it comes to EVs within India? I think don't you think they are maybe a few years behind?
Yeah, I think Japanese manufacturers are betting heavily on hydrogen. Now, maybe they know something that nobody else knows, and if
they could put a rabbit on the hat,
you never know, right? But if EVs are the future, then I think that's a major risk factor then for Maruti.
You got it right. I think it's one thing which I don't like about Maruti is the fact that they do not have an EV strategy. They have said that they will unveil that EV strategy, but when you compare it with M&M and Tata Motors, I think certainly they are lagging. But I think that you need to keep one aspect in mind, that the EV revolution for passenger vehicles in India is going to be much later than what we have seen in China, Europe and US. So we are, I think, many years behind adopting passenger vehicles in the EV space. So the first EVs will come into two-wheelers rather than the passenger vehicles in India, because we don't even have a robust EV ecosystem to charge the batteries.
I'm going to disagree with you on that, purely because if you look at the West as a model of transition from gasoline cars to EVs, then yes, that makes sense. But if you look at China, which is the real global leader in EVs, they didn't have this transition from gasoline to EV. Their homegrown EV companies, which is BYD and the others, I guess supported by CATL, for a lot of Chinese consumers, their first car was an EV. And if you look at government schemes like FAME and the kind of licensing and GST benefits being given to EVs, I think there is a fair expectation that a lot of the incremental consumers might find that their first car itself is an EV.
I'm all with you. I think if that happens, then I would like to stand corrected that if India's EV industry becomes as robust as what we have seen in China, then I think that's great news for Indian consumer as well as the Indian economy.
And the Indian environment. I mean,
absolutely.
We're living in Mumbai, we're breathing the air. It would be lovely if it was a little bit cleaner.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as I said, the big risk factor in Maruti is the fact that they do not have a proper EV strategy. Maybe they'll unveil it in future. But having said that, I think they have worked very hard on new models, and the kind of slate which is there, I think is very impressive. And also one more important aspect is that gradually Maruti is becoming the export hub for Suzuki as well. I think they're focusing a lot on exports to other developing nations. And I was in Israel recently and I saw a lot of a lot of Suzuki cars over there. I don't know whether they were imported from India or not, but they're making India as the manufacturing hub for exports as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic for the Indian economy and job creation. But I mean, I know they don't have an EV strategy, but as you can see, their historical performance from a sales and a revenue perspective, as well as from a margin perspective, and as we've mentioned, a market share perspective has been very strong.
That's right.
So
You can look at the figures, I think, but
Yeah, yeah.
they're fantastic over the last 15, 20 years. What they've done, even recent performance has been exceptionally good. So I think it's great times for Maruti shareholders. And although it's not a recommendation, I think it's certainly a stock to watch.